Hi everybody, welcome to our lecture for Chapter 5 from the Sullivan text looking at alternate forms of observation. As we go through this chapter, you are going to find that this is a fantastic chapter that goes over these alternate methods and alternate ways of looking at things. And actually, I'm going to try to change the background template on it right now. I think I get the feeling we're in a room where I need the background to be darker, so give me 1 second. Background. Well, let's make this one work. I think here it is. So, slideshow from current slide. So, okay. So this will make it easier for everybody to see since this is a completely online lecture. We've talked about a lot of these methods in class already, but there's a lot of text here, but I don't necessarily think that it's good text. It's stuff that's going to give you an introduction to this stuff, but I don't want you to overly rely on it or overly think that it's the do-all and end-all, but it's here to kind of give you an overview of the different type of methods that could be used. We've talked about all these. We've really looked at all these in depth throughout our course. So I will go over them. It's a good review, but don't overly worry about the text. It's there kind of as a support if you've not seen these methods or if you want a quick refresher on them. There are 7, and those are the chapter objectives: instructional rounds, book study groups, lesson study groups, peer coaching, critical friends, portfolio assessment, and action research. And think about it. We've covered all of these in some form. Instructional rounds, that was what the Catcher book really is looking at. Book study groups, well, that was our leadership theory class. That was the big idea in that. Lesson study groups, that's part of professional learning communities. Peer coaching, we've talked about the role of the instructional coach in the supervision process. Critical friends groups really relates to kind of the deform Marzano model that we've at least mentioned. Portfolio assessment, this is your way of keeping documentation of everything that you've done throughout the year. And then action research, that's how I'm actually going to end the course, by talking about action research. So instructional rounds are basically a group of teachers walk around, they observe, look at the classroom, and they get in, they get out, but they don't distinguish and differentiate between teachers. You go observe 10 different teachers, and you say at the same time, these are all of the teachers that I'm observing, and this is my cumulative observation of them. It's a part of the overall objectives of the school plan, and it really shows what the teachers are doing as a group to meet the school benchmarks in the school direction. So the first thing that you have to do is you identify a practice or a problem that you think is going on with instruction, and then you go around as a group with trained people, preferably that are all a mix of responsibilities. And then they create the data, and they can determine how they can use it to get further dialogue, further debate, and further use of the instructional materials. They'll look at ways that are neither evaluative nor judgmental, basically because they're going to look at a million different people. You're going to do this with a mass group of teachers, but you're not going to say teacher A did so-and-so right, teacher B did so-and-so wrong, teacher C did part right, part wrong. When you give when you give feedback for instructional rounds, you do it in a way that it hits every single person along the lines. You use it to learn new classroom approaches, say what's working, and you disseminate the information to everybody about every single practice. Book study groups, that was the whole point of my leadership theory project that all of you did, whether you liked it or you're not. It was a book study group. You look for interesting and pertinent topics for all teachers, something that they have a common background with, and then you position it in the beginning of the school year and you continue it around, and you use that book as a way to improve instruction. I find that this works best when you do it outside of education, which is why I had you all do a book study from a business book. I wanted it to be different, and I wanted to make it work well. So normally the chair picks ideas, they schedule it, they communicate it. Teachers from all departments join in. They pick a time that works well. Meetings are about once a month. People take turns choosing books, and then they agree to each other's book choices basically as a means to make sure that it meets the time requirements and the in the time expectation of the book that you pick. Most of the time, you want to make sure that if you're involved in these, that you are reading and you are contributing to the meeting as long as you can. But it should be really built in more holistic than anything else. And as I said in the leadership theory class, you have to commit to this in the beginning of the school year and have activities that are built in throughout the school year, or nobody will take it seriously. So administrators should pay for the books. Somebody purchases them and makes sure everybody gets them. It should be something that teachers are encouraged to take notes on their own, and then they reflect on their notes as part of the group. If there are people that aren't members of the group that's doing the book study, it should be shared at a department meeting, and this should be more of a voluntary basis than anything else. So lesson study groups is new. This is when teachers assess lesson plans from top to bottom and provide feedback on them without names on them. It's good if you do the lesson tied in with the lesson plan, and if you can have a video recording, and this is one of the things that you'll see for National Board Certification of Teachers. When you provide lesson plans, you send them in, you have to have video of lessons, and teachers and principals look for elements of good teaching. It's easier to assess somebody and get practice when you don't know the person you're assessing, and if you're able to do that, I think that's a great idea. So you get a theme of what the lesson plan should look like. Are we looking at instructional improvement? Are we looking at long-term strategies to implement Bloom's taxonomy? Is there a detailed lesson plan that goes along with it? Does one member present the lesson while others are observing and collecting data? What does it look like? What should the procedure be? Should they be filmed? Should they not be filmed? Should they be audio recorded? Who does that impact? What does that look like? Then you obviously debrief and revise, reflect and share, and you present it to your faculty and staff. Peer coaching, we've talked about this throughout the course. It's really when 2 or more teachers meet to look over the teaching process as a whole, offer different feedback, creative thinking, and different planning opportunities to really help in the development of appropriate teaching practices. You use peer coaching more or less to try to build connections and improve school culture, and I'm a firm believer in that. The peer coaching model should not be a model that's used for should not be a model that's used to completely evaluate teachers, but it should be used for making connections, making friends with each other, and helping to improve teaching through that kind of friendship. And that's why collegiality and professional dialogue is a huge part of it. It also lets you share information with each other, but this is really more or less your peer modeling, your collegiality approach. Make sure that the groups that are involved, if you do a peer coaching model, are able to play along nicely with others. They have to be understanding of who they're working with, explain it, and they're part of the clinical supervision model as well. Sometimes peers cover each other's classes, and sometimes you have to do weekly or bi-weekly seminars for peer coaching when you need it, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and they're meeting the appropriate objectives and they're hitting the targets that need to be hit. The critical friends group, and I apologize for kind of the overlap on here. That's basically because I changed the template so you could see the writing. But remember, the professional learning community is this idea that people come together and they learn collaboratively. It's a big part of our doc program here, not as much as a part of the master's program, but it's part of the critical friends group where people are coming together. They talk practically about their teaching experiences. They work collaboratively, and they work collaboratively across departments, not just in their own subject area or their own grade level, but people are working collaboratively to improve teaching and learning. It should be linked somewhat to theory, and if it is, that means that the students are going to benefit because they're getting the most up-to-date theoretical framework that potentially could exist. And as everything we've talked about in this class, it needs to be used to improve teaching and learning as a whole. So the portfolio assessment, I did a lot of this in early childhood education. This is a big concept and a big idea there because teachers really have the opportunity to show their stuff and show the work that they've done throughout the school year. Teachers can advance work and show that they know how to advance the work as well. And I think that's a big idea and equally important. when you do this, I've bolded one of them, and it might not come out in the video, but there has to be a professional development day to show how portfolios are created, where samples are provided to teachers. I'm coming from an early childhood lens. When you had teachers in their first 3 years do their professional portfolio to show their way to get from the beginning of their career towards the tenure phase in Pennsylvania, a lot of these districts didn't give firm guidelines on this, and when that happened, you had basically just a whole mess of portfolios that meant absolutely nothing. I hated this. If you're going to do a portfolio approach, you got to have a professional development day to say what it should include, what it should look like. I want pictures, I don't want pictures. That's the biggest idea here, and I think the issue that matters the most. Why do you do this? There's a ton of advantages to this method. I've listed all of them. I'm not going to go into depth on each of them, but try to think of this idea that it really holds this accountability piece in place, where you have to document what your areas of expertise are, what you've done, and you can show it off. It takes a lot of time. Teachers have to be accepting of that as a process. If they're going to change based on their portfolio, that takes time as well. And you have to give the people the materials they need to do it the way that it's supposed to be done. Portfolio learning, I look at this list, but all of these are important. I could spend an entire class talking about portfolio work. I did when I taught early childhood. It's a big idea, it's a big concept, and the teachers really need to be coached in order to do it well. Action research, if it's done appropriately, the bottom line is the one that I think matters most. It has to be done for teachers, by teachers, and it has to have a different range of methodologies that are in place for it. The benefits to action research, it can really allow self-improvement and reflection. It can say that all the teachers in the organization are committed to instructional improvement in creating a better school climate. It empowers the people who are part of it, even if they're not the ultimate decision maker that's in charge, but they're going to feel empowered, they're going to be able to make decisions that make it work, and it's going to promote professional development as well. In order for action research to work, there has to be a clear approach, and the right stakeholders need to be involved in it. You can't do something that's too much. There has to be a schedule to it, there has to be specific materials and specific things, and the unit and program has to be based off of the project. So that's it. I'm going to borrow some stuff from the school reform course to really talk about the mission and vision of school, since we've talked about that in leadership theory a little bit, but I think it's good information. And that'll be the next time that we look at Sullivan, that'll be the chapter that we look at. If you need anything else, please let me know. Thank you.